Hi, everybody. Going to talk about what's out to launch, meaning activity in the space launch world. And there's an awful lot to talk about right now. First thing I want to talk about is something from last month, kind of a follow on. We mentioned there was going to be a secret military spy satellite launch from Central California. Sometimes these things are visible from the Los Angeles area, so it's good to have a heads up. But because they're secret, they're announced, the exact timing isn't announced at the last minute for secrecy purposes. So it can be a little bit hard to get a look at one, but our own spy, meaning David Pensky, is an observatory guide, but he's also a space enthusiast. He did hear when the launch was announced, got up to Central California and recorded this beautiful picture of the launch of the Delta IV rocket, one of the largest rockets in the world today, with its three cores. If you look carefully, you can see the rocket's made out of three different central parts. It's launching who knows what, some kind of a secret military satellite into space. And it's a good thing that David was kind enough to go up and get this good picture for all of us, because it was partly clear in Los Angeles at the time of the launch. I was looking out a second-story window, and there were clouds all over the northwest horizon. So we didn't get a chance to see it, unfortunately. But David Pensky, thank you so much in letting us get a look at this powerful rocket doing an important, if secret, launch. Something else going on these days on April 29th, the Chinese. This is not a launch we could see from here, of course, but it's an important launch. The Chinese launched their Tianhe module, which is the central core module of their new space station, like the International Space Station, except this is just a Chinese space station, and this is the first part of it. Now, there's nobody on this launch. It's just the first part of the space station, and it successfully launched on April 29th. There was some interesting follow-on from this, because this rocket stage, the big giant rocket that launched it, actually made it into orbit itself. Usually first stages don't do that. They'll just fall back into the ocean right away. But in this case, the rocket stage was orbiting the Earth for several days, and there was concern because it was out of control. It was just falling around the Earth until it fell back to Earth, and we didn't know where that was going to happen. So there was some danger, very slight, that it might re-enter the atmosphere and break up and come back to Earth over a populated area. Now, the Earth is 3/4 water, so it's almost for sure it'll land in the ocean. Fortunately, that is what happened. It re-entered the Earth's atmosphere over the Indian Ocean and splashed down somewhere in the vicinity of the Maldives, the Maldive Islands. There's no reports of any damage or anything like that, but the international space community did wag their fingers a little bit at the Chinese over this and suggested that in future, like with most launches, that the Chinese re-enter their rocket stages in a controlled way so that we know they're going to land far away from people. Still, it's a successful launch, the beginning of a new space station around the Earth, and we'll watch in the coming months as the Chinese assemble and eventually crew, put astronauts aboard their new space station. Pretty exciting. Speaking of astronauts, SpaceX launched another crew on the space capsule, the Dragon space capsule, on April 23rd. This is the Crew 2 mission, the second operational mission where a commercial operation is launching astronauts for the United States. All four astronauts safely reached the space station, and that resulted in a little bit of crowding up there. You see here the four new arrivals wearing the black shirt in the center, but you see in the back we have three cosmonauts from Russia, and then on the sides we've got the four astronauts from the Crew 1 mission. So while you have one of these crew changeovers, the space station can get very crowded. We actually had 11 people on the space station at the same time. That was enough that not all of the astronauts and cosmonauts could get one of the station's beds, if you can call it that, a crew berth. Some of the various astronauts had to sleep inside some of the spacecraft that are docked to the station right now. That works just fine for the couple of days until we get the other crew back. And we did get Crew 1 coming home and making a little more room on the space station. This is actually a picture taken from the International Space Station by Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency, looking down at the Earth, and you can see city lights on the Earth. Those are the city lights of Florida. And the streak is actually the Crew 1 spacecraft entering the Earth's atmosphere on its way down to a splashdown right off the coast of Florida. Um, Here's a picture of the actual splashdown. It's unusual that a splashdown happens at night. In fact, this is only the third time the United States has ever splashed down at night. And it's the first time since 1968 when I was 4 years old. So it really is an unusual sight. There's a boat there in the water at the center that has a floodlight that's pointing up at the spacecraft coming down under its 4 parachutes. So the Crew 2 mission is home and all is well. And we now have 7 astronauts and cosmonauts on the International Space Station. Meanwhile, down in Texas, and with these all space broadcasts, we're going to be constantly keeping an eye down in South Texas because the things going on down there are pretty exciting. This is, of course, the SpaceX Starship, the prototypes, the test vehicles with nobody on board that are being tested for this gigantic rocket system. What you're looking at there is serial number 15. They've been building a number of them and testing them in hops to see if they can fly and if they can land. This will be, when it's all finished and put together, just the second stage of a gigantic rocket that'll be even bigger than the Saturn V moon rocket. But bear in mind, even this second stage is 17 stories tall. It's a monster. And getting it to go up into the sky, shut off its engines, and come back for a landing on its tail is very tricky, as they've found out. If you have a look at the last 4 prototypes, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, I especially like the one all the way on the right. They launched in the fog. We didn't see it explode, but you saw the pieces falling. Very sad. But these are tests. All 4 of these previous test vehicles had the same unfortunate ending, a fireball. Although admittedly, SN10 did manage to land and stand on its landing gear for about 8 minutes on the ground after its flight before exploding. So we have had a lot of problems with that. And serial number 15, they skipped a couple numbers. There was no serial number 12, 13, 14. They went to 15. It had a lot of improvements on the inside, things to the engines, control surfaces, computers, all kinds of things. And they gave it another try just recently. What do you think happened? Well, the test flight happened on May 5th. And the rocket went up to about airliner height, ballpark of 10 kilometers above the Earth, where its engines shut down one by one. The rocket basically belly flopped. It's designed to guide itself back down with those big giant fins, falling like a skydiver until at the last minute, it turns its nose back upward, fires its rocket engines, and slows down, hopefully, to a smooth, safe stop on the ground. What happened? Well, ta-da! They did it. And this would, ta-da is about right. This would be worthy of any circus act, somebody getting shot out of a cannon. Well, except here, we're landing a 17-story tall, gigantic rocket stage on its engines and managing to set down safely. We did. And this sat there just fine. Now, if you look closely at this picture of serial number 15 after landing, you will see there's a little bit of fire down at the bottom of the rocket. They're spraying some water on it and things like that. That's something they need to work on, but they got the fire put out. It was a very serious fire, and it worked. So this gigantic rocket ship that they're hoping someday will take people to Mars has passed a critical test. And now it's even more important than it was just recently, because although this is a SpaceX project, Elon Musk's kind of pet project, now it's more than that. NASA has chosen the SpaceX Starship to be the next lunar lander for people, for the moon. And you can see here, it would be huge. The little spacecraft that it's docked to with the 4 solar panels, that's the Orion spacecraft that NASA is building to take astronauts from the Earth to the vicinity of the moon. The big giant thing it is docked to is a special version of the Starship that could be built to take the astronauts the rest of the way down to the moon. And what a lunar lander it would be. This is an artist concept from SpaceX showing the lander on the surface, and look down at the bottom. Those are astronauts standing down there, a moon rover. Look at the flag. There's a tiny little flag. This makes Apollo look like nothing. It's incredible. This gigantic rocket could bring some amazing capabilities for exploring the moon. So now, fortunately, with serial number 15's success, it looks like NASA is going to have a gigantic lunar lander. They're still working on these things, and there'll be constant reports in All Space Considered as these tests progress. Now, speaking of a spectacular success, let's go to Mars. Now, we've been talking a lot about Mars these days, and All Space Considered has been following the success of the NASA Perseverance lander on Mars. But we have also mentioned the other international partners who've been sending missions to Mars. For example, the United Arab Emirates has an orbiter circling Mars. Hope is the name of their orbiter. Well, the Chinese are in the game now with a spectacular mission, the Tianwen-1 mission. Tianwen means questions to heaven. Beautiful name for a spacecraft. And of course, that's what all these probes do. They ask questions. But Tianwen is an ambitious mission. It does a lot of things, and it's their first Mars mission. And get a load of this. You can see in the top there in this concept art from China, the Tianwen has an orbiter that will circle Mars. Most people just start with an orbiter. That's the easier thing to do, but Tianwen goes way beyond that. The white part of the orbiter is actually a shield around what you see at the bottom. There is a rover, the Zhurong rover, and a landing stage that it drives off of. So not only an orbiter, but also a lander, and not just a lander, but a rover, all in the same mission. Well, Tianwen's orbiter arrived earlier. We've remarked on that before. But this month, the question has been, can they land on Mars? And not many people have been able to do it. There have been plenty of failures in trying to land on Mars. In fact, only so far, the United States had been able to land a vehicle successfully on Mars. The place that the Chinese were aiming for is marked by a white X on this global map of Mars. You might notice just to the left of that white X with a green dot is marked Perseverance. That's the crater where Perseverance is. And up above the white X, you will see Viking 2, the 1976 lander of the United States. Only our second lander, Viking 1, landed on the other side of the planet. I will notice, I mentioned that sometimes these landings don't go right. The British had a lander that they tried, Beagle 2, and you can see just below the white X, there's an orange dot for Beagle 2. That is not a successful landing. Unfortunately, it crashed. Well, what happened? Did the Chinese manage to do it? Well, here's a picture that an animation series of pictures the Chinese captured of the capsule that contained the lander being jettisoned on its way to go down to the surface. Drum roll, please. Congratulations to China. China did it. They have landed the Tianwen-1 lander and the Zhurong rover. You can see a picture here of the rover and the surface of Mars in the Utopia Planitia region. And you can see the solar panels. The Perseverance rover for the United States is nuclear powered. Zhurong is solar powered, as were, for example, the US Spirit and Opportunity rovers. So that's what all that black is. Those are solar panels for sun energy. Here's a picture taken after the deployment of the ramp down to the surface, taken from the Zhurong rover, looking out at the horizon. Looks like a great place to explore, not too many huge boulders. So they're in great shape to explore Utopia Planitia. And we look forward to hearing lots of more adventures from Zhurong as it rolls down the ramp and gets on its way. So this is an ongoing developing story, but congratulations to the Chinese for a spectacular success. Only the second country in the world to make a successful soft landing on Mars. As far as upcoming things, in June, we're going to have a couple of different things. We have a SpaceX cargo resupply mission to the International Space Station. We have at the end of the month, June 29th is scheduled now, a Russian cargo mission to the International Space Station. And then sometime in June, the Chinese, remember we said they launched the core module for their space station. It's up there now. They will be launching the Shenzhou 12 mission with astronauts, actually they call them taikonauts for the Chinese program, to actually go up and stay aboard the space station as they start assembling and activating it. So it's a pretty exciting time for launches and space activity, and keep your eyes to this space for further updates. Thanks a lot.